All right, all right, all right. Hey everyone, it's your girl Jamilah Lawry, CEO of My Biz Consulting, and today we have an amazing guest with us today on 10 Minutes of Talk from businesspowertools.com. I'm super excited. If you know anything about me, I'm all about the power tools when it comes down to your business. So, this gentleman is going to tell you all about how he made a platform where he actually beats what I believe my hustle and hack. He actually put me to shame here, and I love it because he can actually help you guys really get it together more than what I yell at you about. So let me go ahead and bring Mr. Burke Franklin on the line here. Let's bring him on the screen. One second here, you guys. Burke, thanks for being on 10 Minutes of Talk. How are you
My
today?
pleasure. Good to see you. I hope I didn't put you to shame in any way. That's not the idea.
Listen, you are awesome. I love to be put to shame. It makes me work harder. Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to jump in. As you know, this is a 10-minute interview. I always go over. I'm sure you can
Oh,
understand
yeah.
why.
Oh, yeah.
So don't hold back. Let's have some fun with it. I have
Having a
some
hair
hot
day here.
questions to ask. You look great. Don't even worry.
Having a hair day
I
anyway.
have
That's good.
allergies. So it's one of those days, right? Let's see. Okay. So the intro here, and I'm going to try to have a little bit of fun with these questions and put you on a hot seat. So we're going to start with my first question, which is what inspired you to create this company and what gap were you trying to fill in the market?
Well, it goes back to being as a kid, I would read popular science and popular mechanics magazines, and I'd see these inventions these guys had, and I think, ooh, I want to be an inventor. Before that, my grandfather had come. He had his own company. He says, you'll never make any money working for somebody else. You got to have your own business. You got to invent something and sell it. And I'm thinking, that's me. That's what I'm going to do. And so I would read these articles in popular science and
Awesome.
popular mechanics with these amazing inventions and think, and I wonder, well, where'd they go? And especially the one where I read about some guy who had invented the 200 mile per gallon carburetor. And of course, carburetors don't even know what those are anymore. But anyway, 200. Why aren't we
Right.
getting 200 miles per gallon? Then where'd this guy go? Where's the company? What happened? And so I was wondering, like, what happens to the good stuff? There's always the good product, and then you get the good product out marketed by the mediocre product, and we end up with some mediocre stuff instead of the good stuff. Especially like the 200 mile per gallon carburetor. Where the hell is it? So that's the basis. It goes
Right.
way back, and I thought I would invent something. And long story short, I was in Silicon Valley. I'd done a number of things, and I'd worked for Texas Instruments selling electronics. I'd worked for the Sharper
Okay.
Image Catalogs, the electronics buyer, and later a catalog copywriter, where I discovered a word
Oh,
processor in Silicon Valley that I sold to enterprises. All that
wow.
said, like, what do you do with a
Smart.
career path like that? Well, a friend of mine calls me up and says, I got a deal going with Apple. Apple wants to buy my engineering software, not the company, just his
Mm,
product. But at the time, the Small Business Administration had done a study of 26,000 businesses that failed and found that 65 some odd percent of them had no business plan. That's not
right.
just startups. This is all kinds of businesses. A lot of people say, well, I don't need a business plan. I'm not a startup. That doesn't matter. And when you go to sell your
Doesn't
business, you wish you had a business plan as well. So it works for you all the way along the way, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, so I helped him with the business plan. He got the deal. And over the next year or something, I can help people with business plans. And so people came to me with some really great ideas. They weren't really quite 200 mile per gallon carburetors, but they were up there. And I thought,
right.
and there was always something the investors didn't get it, or something was they didn't make sense. And I said, well, pitch it to me. And I said, oh,
Um,
you need to show this, you need to say that. What about this, that, and the other thing? And I'd put together these plans, and they got funded. All of them except one. The one guy, you can't be. You got to tell the truth. That's what can I say? It always comes out in the end. So one guy was
right.
not. Anyway, that's just the exception. But the other ones, great. Anyway, so I'm thinking well, I think one of these days I'm going to have an invention, and I'm going to want the ultimate business plan for myself. And
Right.
I thought, why don't I just grab all this content that I've created for these people, the structure, what I'd learned, and put together this outline for a business plan that I could use. And as I'm putting this together, I'm looking at this and going, this is the product,
That's it.
and so that became our Biz Plan Builder business
Mm,
planning software system, and later added Excel financial models to it, pitch deck to it. There's lots of business plan templates out there, free templates. You get stuff from Score and the
yeah.
SBA, but they really don't have any content in them.
And we're
And
going to talk about that.
so,
I have a few questions that's
yeah,
going to
okay,
kind
so
of
I'll leave
take
you
us
to that.
into
So
that.
yeah, that's the long story where it came from.
Wow, nice, nice, nice. And I think that's common for us techies who are not necessarily looking to code for the rest of our lives or do anything like that or sell software, but actually have a niche that we can hone in on. So, I mean, I think it's awesome. I'm super excited about Business Powers tools. I can't wait to tell all of my clients about it, actually. So, my next question, if you had to explain your business to someone in 30 seconds, no buzzwords, how would you describe what you do and who you do it for?
I would say it's well, in terms of online these days, it is an online platform. It's an online dashboard. It's loaded with ready to use, done for you software. Well, I don't take the word software, templates really for writing a business plan, policies and procedures, marketing strategies. There's a number of spreadsheets to help you do the math. The math you just can't do in your head. I mean, a financial
Right.
model for a business, you got to be able to walk an investor through that. So really, I say the main initial place where people start is how do you explain this business to an investor who's got a
Right.
whole bunch of questions from like, what problem are you solving? Who's got it? How many of these people are they? What are they doing now? What would they be willing to pay? How do you reach them? I mean, who else is doing this? Who's on your team? You can imagine it's all these questions, and you probably need money to build this business. So you need to give the investors a believable explanation, if you will, or believable. It's not just a pitch. It's more than that. They have a lot of questions. They're going to wake up tomorrow after your blistering pitch and think that was great,
Send
but
you
wait a
100
minute.
emails.
Hey Steve, what do you think about this idea? They're going to call their
Mhm.
friends, and then they're going to come out with more
Exactly.
questions, and there's all that. So you've really got to have your act together, and it'll take you 4 to 6 months of chasing them around, answering questions when you could have what I would
Yes.
consider like this catalog of answers ready to go up front.
Hmm.
Most people, unfortunately, they don't even know what to ask AI to write, let alone have AI write a business plan that's going to answer the investors' questions. And so,
Exactly.
having dealt with
Exactly.
and listened to investors for the last 35 years, I think we've pretty much covered most of the questions they're going to ask. So
Awesome. Awesome.
that's really
Yeah, I
the key.
think
They,
that's
they bet
the
they
biggest
bet on
struggle.
us. They bet on the jockey, not the horse. So you've really got
Right.
to be able to look
Right.
them in the eye and answer the questions.
Awesome. Awesome. So, as you said, you offer expert design templates, which everybody needs at this point, and tools. Can you explain how that takes the guesswork out of? So if I was to say, "Hey, I'm going to sign up for Business Power Tools," how does this
Yeah.
take the guesswork out for me? And you went over it a little bit, but let's hone in on one situation here and say, how would this really help a business?
Well, my favorite story to tell, of course, is the client who he wanted to raise money to buy some Lear jets to start a jet charter service. And it's not the kind of investment that venture capitalists is going to make unless they're buying a jet for themselves. But that's
Right.
not the case here.
Exactly.
And so instead, I said, well, do you know anybody who's got a couple of jets? Maybe you can go to them. And so he went to this man who owned two jets, showed him the plan of what he would do if I could give me your jets, I will charter them out. We'll fly you anywhere you want to go, but we will manage your airplanes. We will charter them out to people. You could probably actually make money owning these things. As far fetched
Hmm.
as that may seem, but you know
Right.
what? He got two free Lear jets out of the deal. So, I'm
Wow.
envious of that. How do you get an airplane without spending a dime? So I had to buy my
Right.
software to use that. But anyway, but nevertheless, now how much money did he need to raise? He just needed some uniforms or, anyway, so he got the airplane. So that was again, it's that explanation, how we take the guesswork out. It's not a fill in the blank. There's no blanks. So it's really
Right.
kind of like, weird example would be we make shoes for XYZ kind of for labor people who work in hospitals, people who are
Mhm.
construction sites, people who work in banks, who have this going on, and we have this many people doing these things. And so you look at that and go,
Excellent.
well, okay, well I make pickup trucks for oil field workers. I mean, you put in your
Right.
own words, but you get a sense of the gist of how to say it.
How to
And then
break
you
it
look at that
down.
and say, well, I'm going to say it like this. And well, that's the
Right.
idea. So you're not looking at a blank screen, wondering like,
Right.
what do I say?
You're
How do I
more of a
say it?
guide. More of a
It is a
guide.
guide, and there's
Awesome.
enough sections in there like that. There's the risk section where I tell people you
Mhm.
got to understand the risks. You've got to reveal the risks because these
Absolutely.
investors often know more about your business, your industry than you do because they've been investing in it for years and they've seen what goes wrong and they want to know that you know what goes wrong and how you're going to
Right.
fix it. And are you going to reveal what you know? Because if you're over here holding, I'm not going to tell them, oh, is this risk? I don't want to mention it because no, you've got to be upfront with it. So that's like where that one
Right.
guy went off the rails. He just wasn't forthcoming. Anyway, but it's got what to say and how to say it throughout it. So it's all like variety of ways of saying kind of the same thing. So you're going to go in and there'll be like 4 or 5 paragraphs that say something similar, but you're going to delete 3 of them and
Right.
go with the one, and then edit it
Makes sense.
and then keep going. But it gives it, you learn a
Definitely
lot
sounds
about
helpful.
business too and what investors are looking for. And
Right.
you need to think of your business like an investor because after all, you are. So
Exactly. Exactly. You are your biggest investor. I try to tell my clients that all the time. And I think it's a mind shift, really getting them to shift their mind over to understanding how this all works. And it sounds like your tool is going to help them really get into that the swing of things by doing instead of having someone do it for you, which, I find a lot of people know nothing about it because they had a few dollars to say, hey, you do it for me. And now they can't even explain it to an investor.
bring that consultant with you to
So
the
I see that
pitch
a lot.
because they're going to answer the questions. But then why should they write you a
Exactly.
check? So yeah,
Exactly.
that's it's to do it for you. It's one of those things. Look, you're asking. Let's say you're asking for $1 million. Do you know how hard it is to make $1 million? So it's
Mhm.
worth they deserve an explanation. Because you're asking
Yes,
somebody for a
yes,
million dollars
absolutely.
and they could do any number of other things with $1 million, then give it to you. And so why
Right.
you and why not the other guy? And why shouldn't they put in, buy a new house and put kids through school and do a bunch of other stuff with their $1 million? Anyway, the amount of work
Exactly.
it takes to get $1 million from an investor using Biz Plan Builder is like hardly that much compared to what it would take to actually go out and make $1 million. And I've made $1 million, so I know that. It's a lot of
So
work.
you can
So
attest to that. Awesome. 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 Well, that's amazing. It's great. I think that this is a guide that's actually needed for people who are, especially right now. I think we got a lot of people who are getting in business who are really getting stuck. And this is a tool I think that can really complement those businesses who I specialize in operations and technology and marketing. And when we roll those things together, they need this technology. They need this in order to get the ball rolling because I'm not a do it for you salon either. And I'm like, okay, you have to understand the business. So I think this is going to be really helpful for that mindset, that mind shift that I try to implement on people like right away.
and if there's a
So this is
gap
awesome. This is
anywhere in your
definitely awesome.
operation,
So what goes
if I was going to say if there's a gap anywhere in all of that, what happens to the business? Like a chain is as strong as its weakest
well,
link. So if
9 times
anything
out
goes
of 10,
wrong, the whole thing.
they're going down. And I mean, and that's what we see a lot of times, or what I go through with clients is more or less they can't leave the business because all their information, the whole operation is up here, and they need to get it on paper. So like you said, a lot of businesses are starting with no business plan, no plan whatsoever, no operations in order, and they're like, hey, I need your help, and they have no way for me to even help them because they can't tell me what they do. So I think this is necessary 100%.
Yeah.
And
And it
it's
doesn't
awesome
have
to
to
know that
be
there's
it
something out there
doesn't have to
like
be
that.
written it doesn't have to be written like professional marketing copywriting. I mean,
Hmm.
these are the facts. This is what it does. This is how it works. So you could give this manual or this plan to you. So I need help. I need this section right here. And you understand what we're doing, where we're going,
Right.
how this whole thing plays out, works together, how you want it to be, what the vision is, what your missions is.
Exactly.
I like to think my mission is creating these tools to help you build a business around a product that will make the world a better place. So if you got an idea
Excellent.
and you want to build a business around it, and it's I'm just going to presume you got an idea that's going to solve a problem. So anyway, and you really
Right.
have to lead with the
Absolutely.
problem you're
Absolutely.
solving. I mean, how can you help with operations
Right.
if you don't know what the business is really all about?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a struggle. It's like pulling teeth sometimes. So I think this will be a great tool to get them started for sure. For sure. So let's talk a little bit about, let's just shift into creating a toolkit like this. And what would you say something like real that goes into even developing a toolkit? Because I feel like this is the toolbox that I talk about all the time. You need your
Yeah.
toolbox. And I feel like this is an actual toolbox. So, how do you ensure your templates are not only useful, but relevant? and current, because every day
Yeah.
in our world it changes. So how do you stay current with your toolkit?
Well, first of all, the way they came to be is we used them all ourselves. And like the original business plan, they were actually pieces and components of real business plans used for people who had real products to get. They really solved the problem. So that's where it came from. It isn't just like, I'm going to make a business plan template. It wasn't like that at all, because it was actually it had to work. And then all the agreements we have, most
Right.
of them are all deals that we've had ourselves, employment agreements, non-disclosure agreements. Those are pretty straightforward. But there's a whole bunch, distribution agreements. And then we've cobbled together pieces of different ones, and then basically translated them, not translated, but made them as plain English as possible. Back in the day when I sold word processors, we had the fine print on the back of the purchase agreement. And they'd say, I'd love to buy these from you right now, but I can't sign this because I need the legal department to review what this contract says on the back of it. And, they couldn't read it. It wasn't in plain English. And so, what happened, it would just either stalled or killed the deal. And now what you really need to have is a contract in plain English. In fact, a lot of lawyers I know are just like, we're not using words like notwithstanding the foregoing, which means no matter what I just said,
Right.
It's plain English so everybody can understand what the deal is. And if even then you say, I understand this deal, I got a question about this, I need to have my lawyer look at this. What does this mean? Fine, but you've saved a tremendous amount of time with that lawyer at $300, $400, $500 an hour. So anyway, back to your question, the financial models, especially the financial model that goes with the business plan. It shows how you, like with the revenue model, like how this thing makes money, the market segments you have, how big are they, what percentage of that market are we going to get, how many units does that translate into at price per unit, and now you've got down to revenue. So you're not saying something that's like the disastrous thing to say is in an investor pitch is, it's a $10 billion market. If we just got 1%, we'd be a $100 million company. You just watch them all just think, oh, Jesus, and they just like, oh, you just killed yourself,
Exactly.
Or they'll say something like, I was a judge on a business plan competition at the University of Texas years ago, and it was 3 venture capitalists and me on this panel. And every single student team came out and said, we're going to do $1 million in our first year. I thought, is it just me, or does everybody do $1 million in the first year? And the VCs just all burst out laughing like, oh my God, we hear that all the time. So you can't say that. You've got to say, we've got X number of people in this segment, Y number of people in this other segment, Z in this segment. Here's how big it is. Here's where we got the information from. So when they do the due diligence is basically verifying that what you say is true and real. So they check that. Yep, you got that. There's that many people in that. I see where you got the numbers from. We could argue about that, but you got them from a legitimate place. We'll go with it. Whatever. And then what? Now, if you said we're going to sell a zillion units in that market, every one of them in an investor pitch has probably got an MBA, and they're going to have a calculator in front of them, and they're going to whip it out and go, "What market share did you just claim?" And if you say, if we got 1% of that market, like I said before, bad. 0.9, 1.1, okay, but something real, something where you
more
really,
realistic.
Yeah, and it could be 0.03, it could be something microscopic, but imagine getting 0.03% of the worldwide car market. It's like, that's a lot. So anyway, then the rest is mostly, it's just arithmetic, really. And so, but it's got it. So then I did this with clients on the phone. The investors are looking at this. I'm putting it on the screen. there's a spreadsheet there, and they're looking at it. I'm looking at it. The client's looking at it, and it's online. And so we can go through it, and the investors say, well, I think that you're going to get a bigger market share than that, or a smaller market share. Okay, I think your prices should go up more than that or less than that. And the math just tracks down the screen. And now they've got something that they can believe because they contributed to what the numbers assumptions are. And they, okay, I believe you now. Okay, that's huge to get the investors to believe really anything. So that's what's critical at that point. At least for then the rest of the model plays all the way down to the valuation.
That's awesome.
Because at the end of the day,
that's again what they need.
I was going to say the revelation I had about all the financial models. At the end of the day, you've done all this preparation, all this pitch, all this follow up, all this presenting, and finally the investor says, "I'll do it. Okay, I'm going to write you a check for $1 zillion. How much of your business do I get?" That's that piece where the rubber meets the road.
Can we talk about that?
Go
Now,
for it. Yeah,
is that a part that's included to help a person really kind of walk through that part?
that's the
Because I
whole
think
point.
that's one of the things a lot of
Yeah,
people. That's
that's the whole idea.
awesome. That's so that right there is your selling point. I mean, because I think that's where people get stuck the most. That is the mud that they fall in once they have everything else together. So that's awesome. And what does that? If you can just give me a brief on what does that actually look like? Just that valuation. I'm sure it's, strategically broken down, um, or even a story where, someone really just needed that part, because I know that that's the biggest struggle when it comes down to
Yeah.
rather selling a business or getting investors. That's the biggest issue.
Well, I talk to business brokers. On one hand, we think of investors at startups, which is true for sure. That's a large part of it. But of course, then there's all these people think, well, I don't need a pitch. I don't need this. I just have my pitch deck and a smile, and we'll get a bunch of money. And you wonder why enough companies get funded, so that seems believable. But behind the scenes, that's really not true. Nevertheless, so at the other end of the spectrum, there's business brokers that'll tell you that unfortunately most businesses are unsellable, just because whatever, or they're a train wreck behind the scenes, which we can help fix that really fast. But to your question, the owner knows what this business is doing. You can plug in all those numbers and the expenses and
Hmm.
everything else, and take out, the fact that they're making their own car payment with company money. That's something you might
Company
take.
money.
Anyway, you can what's called recasting. You can recast and take that out, but it goes to the end of the model, and you can see. So here's your 5-year projection, cash flow, profit, revenue, all that. And then we have the Harvard model. Harvard came up with a business valuation model. There's the first Chicago method, which I still can't explain. I see how the formula works, but it's like I don't. Anyway, and then there's the discounted cash flow method, and then there's a pretty much a common venture
Mm,
capitalist method. And so we have all four of those valuations using
okay.
those numbers. And then you might put in, I think my
Nice.
projected price earnings ratio is going to be 10, meaning, by the value of my stock is 10 times my profit is 10 times that. So
Okay.
I got that backwards. Anyway,
Gotcha.
yeah, so you got a certain amount. If your profit's $1 million and your PE is 10, that means your business is worth 10 million, even though you're generating $10 million
Right.
in profits. So that's your price earnings ratio. Anyway, that's that. You can put that in as an assumption. If I put in a PE of 10, this is what it's going to be worth. And you get
Hmm.
all four different valuations. And of course, the fifth one is the average of all four of those. And so now you've got something, since
Nice.
you've built this model up along the way, that you arrive at this number.
Hmm. Uh-oh. Lost him. Well, guys, let's give him a moment to get back. Let's let him log back in. He can log back into that. So right now we are live. I'm not going to go offline. We're going to keep him here. We are live with CEO Burke Franklin of businesstools.com, which he has given us some amazing explanations. Not sure where we lost him. I think we lost his connection, but we got him back right now, guys. I'm going to bring him back on the screen. Only a few seconds. Okay.
That was weird. Anyway, I don't know why that
That was so
happened.
weird.
I touched nothing. Anyway,
It's
but
okay.
yeah, but we were talking about valuation, and so this is where if you can walk the investor through from the revenue model that makes sense, and you show them the expenses, and you're showing them the people you're going to hire, what you're going to invest in marketing and product
Mhm.
development, cost of goods, and overhead and all that kind of stuff, and any financing you've got going in there. It'll show cash flow, revenue, balance sheet, even has
Nice.
ratios. All those ratios of, like, this is where the MBAs will whip out their calculators and beat everything
And
up.
question everything. Right.
Yeah, and so there's that, and that's a big deal. And then there's the what's called the sensitivity analysis. That's your best worst case. So you've got, well,
Mm,
we got competitors that we'll give you 3 sets of financial models, and you can see the best case, worst case, and planned case. I'm thinking,
right.
that's painful. Why not? Who wants to look through all these financial models? Why don't you just take one screen and you run,
Hmm.
the plan down the middle? Call this is what I think.
Right.
This is what I'm projecting in 5 years down the middle. And on one side it
Hmm.
says worst case, best case, and you put in you're going
Right.
to sell half of what you said you're going to sell. You're going to sell twice what you're going to sell. Okay. And the investor
Hmm.
could look at that and say, well, hold it here. I think you're going to do X and Y. Okay. And then you go down to, what are my more
Right.
costs going to be? Marketing, overhead, cost, all that stuff, X and Y. And you get to the bottom, you get 3 different numbers. If everything goes to hell in a handbasket, this is it. If it goes according to plan, this is it. If
Right.
you hit the ball out of the park with the tailwind, this is it. But we're not done yet. What probability of each of these scenarios is it? 30% of this, 20% of that, 50% of that one. Does the math. And now you've got a whole new number of, this is the new projection that the investor is involved in coming up with this number. So now they're going, well, I believe from the beginning. I can see how you got here. And now here's me paring it down. And now we go to the valuation page with these new numbers and voila. So, and it's designed for,
You got them
I'm not a
invested as well.
financial
Yeah.
person. Yeah, I mean, I designed this so it made sense to me, something like,
Right.
how do you
Right.
make
Which
this
is
make sense? And
awesome.
it's just
Right.
refined and refined and refined. And as we answer people's questions and explain it to them, like, oh, we better say this, we better fix that. Over the years, it's been evolving over 30 years, so it's
Right.
pretty tight.
Awesome. Wow.
And it's not full of lots of colors and colorful things that are
I
like,
love it.
what am
I
I
love
looking
it.
at?
So,
You
right. Right. And that's the typical tool these days. That's what it gets you engaged. But so was there ever a moment you felt like just giving up on this idea? And I know this is like a lot. And like you said, you made this so you can understand it. So was there ever a time you felt like, okay, I give up on this? And what actually kept you going?
There's been a number of times where you just think, why am I doing this? It's just this is more trouble than it's worth. And then of course I'll get an email from somebody, or this product saved my business, this saved my life. Like, darn, I got to keep going. But yeah, we got a number of testimonials where people are just like, oh, this is so amazing. This really, my business wouldn't have made it. I never would have gotten this investment. The guy never would have gotten the Learjets. Medical products have evolved out of this thing. A couple of women started an Airbnb. It just helped them get the money they needed. And most of the time, really, I'd say the motivation is that people need money. If you don't need money, you figure you can just wing it. But if you really need money, you need to provide an explanation, or it's like a brochure. Like I said, it's a catalog of answers to the inevitable questions investors are going to ask. If they don't ask it today, they'll ask it tomorrow, or they'll ask it 2 months from now. What about this? Oh God, So, but yeah, to your question, there's been a number of times, like entrepreneur, you wake up and go, I don't want to do this anymore. This is hard, and then you say, no, what else am I going to do? What else I'm going to do is going to be harder, and especially if you've got a sense for it and you feel for the people and you want to see the inventions make it. I mean, I'm presuming everybody's doing something good in the world with their invention. I'll just make that assumption, but not necessarily. But hey, at least it's something that'll be a successful business, and maybe along the way, we'll give them some enlightenment along the way. Because I've done workshops for 40 years, and all these kind of like Northern California, woo-woo workshops where I can speak woo-woo, but I won't say it here. But we take some of the concepts and infuse it throughout all of our stuff, so people get a sense of like, this really is the enlightened, mindful way to approach this. Like I'll give you an example in the employee handbook. One of the things we talk about, you got to fire people from time to time. Those are the days like, I don't want to do this business. I don't want to fire people. They're my friends. I become friends. But you got to fire them.
Exactly.
The challenge here is you want to do it in a way that they dignified. You've got to preserve their dignity. They've got to be able to save face. The worst thing you can do is fire somebody in anger and say things that don't ever say anything you're going to regret. I mean, that just start there. But this is where the employee lawsuits come from. You just pissed somebody off because you insulted them, or you shamed them, or you embarrassed them, and they're going to get even with that. And so if you can minimize any time in your life that you do that, but that's the kind of thing we talk about is, be careful, because in the heat of the moment, you can say and do stupid things, and you've really got to like zip it and be mindful of how you're treating people, because that makes a world of difference. And with investors, people think, I've heard many people say, oh, that guy got so much money, he doesn't care. Big mistake. The reason they've got so much money is because they care.
Because he cares.
They want a better deal on a sandwich even. I mean, it's incredible. Exactly. Like, you're a billionaire. You care about an extra $1 on a sandwich? Yeah. It's like.
Down to the penny. Down to the penny. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's fast forward a bit. Where do you see your platform growing or evolving to in the next year? And what's the next big goal or rollout?
Well, the fun thing is I'm raising capital for it myself now. We've done this before. I had some partners in here, and now of course now we need AI. Now I'm not one to jump in on brand new technology right away because that's risky. I mean, if I go to the VCs or venture capitalists, the angels who are going to invest in this thing, in the business power tools, it's like, I'm tracking probably about 50 different kinds of AIs that do different stuff. If I use bleeding edge
Mm-hmm.
tools in some of these things, some of those can break. And if those break, like in
Right.
anything operational, if something breaks, the whole operation breaks. I can't afford my system to break. So I want some of this stuff to mature somewhat more, so it's more of a robust product or tools to build into it. So I'm
Right.
raising money to build AI throughout the system. It won't write the whole business plan for you, but you could go to the market analysis section and we can have the prompt built into it. Take the content that we have, take this, look at the world, come back with an analysis of my business. And that will give you an
Makes
education on
sense.
what you need to look for. And for God's sake, proofread it. Because it's just like I get
Right.
more emails that aren't
Well,
proofread.
yeah,
You
I
just
mean, and that's with prompting in general. So just kind of infusing generative AI inside of what you already have, utilizing your documentation kind of as the prompt, the leading prompt to actually come up with answers. I love that.
Yeah, and the different part of the
Awesome.
AI could be
Awesome.
assemble. You said you're a service business, so the AI is going to go and assemble the components of our business plans. It's just a whole bunch of components, different pieces where you can check the
Right.
box. Right now, you check the box. I'm going to include this section. Uncheck the box. I'm not going to include this section. But let's say you have a service business. All our bits on manufacturing would just be
Makes sense.
left out because they don't apply. So why even put them in front of you? We would just pare it down and give you this is the business plan pathway you need for what you're doing right now. Are you raising money with it? Are you going to sell the business? Are you a nonprofit looking for funding? Are you looking for angel investors? Is this going to be a Reg CF, a crowdfunding deal, an A plus, a B? There's all these different kinds of fundings. And so here's what
Right.
you want to do. Which funding do you want? And we can just assemble it for you and do that. And then the employee handbook bits would be
Right.
go out. What state are you in? How many employees do you have? You need a kitchen policy for an accounting firm in Kansas. That's very different than a kitchen policy for a restaurant in Utah. Because a restaurant's going to
Right.
have to have more than 50 people. That makes a difference. I mean, there's all these little quirky things that get baked into these things that you just have to keep track
Right.
of. And so I like to think we've been eliminating BS from business for 30 years, 35 years now. So anything, this is
Right.
all stuff. I mean, your
I'm
operations,
sure. I'm sure.
your everything is about how do I make this thing work so I can sell the product, get people to buy my product and use it because I'm saving the world with this product. Please buy it now. And
Exactly.
everything else is just like
Yep.
I got to put this thing together. But you need the machine that does the
All the
job. And
details.
that's where we
I
have.
call it the fun part. Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
this is all kind of
That's
like the not
amazing.
fun part, but we make the not fun part doable so you can do the fun part and you have this.
So you can
An
get
average
through it to the
employee
fun part.
lawsuit costs $250,000, according to the Society of Human
Woo.
Resources Managers, SHRM. So how do you go to your investors and say, yeah, I'm touching my employees, which you shouldn't be doing. I should make a bumper sticker. Keep your hands off the help.
Don't
But
touch. Right.
it's just catastrophically stupid. But nevertheless, you go to your investors. I'm in this employee lawsuit for $250,000 of your money that I just burnt because I'm an
Right.
idiot. And so sounds kind of harsh, but I
No, it
mean,
happens. It's pretty
read
much
read the
everyday
news
type of
every
situation.
other day. There's somebody doing something.
Absolutely. 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 So in our closing, we're going to go to if someone's listening right now and they're on a fence about, whether they should do this or not, what's the one thing you say to convince them to give your platform a try?
Well, I say right, certainly if you're looking for money, capital, this is the ultimate explanation, the ultimate. I don't want to call it a pitch, but it really because the investors are getting pitched. Now, investors they're looking for businesses to invest in. That's what they do. But
Right.
it really is. It just simplifies. It's an educational tool, if you will. It's kind of collapses books, webinars, videos, software into one thing. So you go through the whole process You know what to do, you know how to do it, you know what to say, you know how to say it, and you end up with a product, a plan, or employee handbook, or most of the business plan. You've got something there that you can bet the farm on, and somebody else can bet the farm on because you've
Right.
covered all the bases. You know, you made sure there's no weak links in this thing, and that's really that would be the key ingredient. And I don't. There's nobody that helps you more than we do. And there's videos with each section too. Me saying, "Look,
Awesome.
here's what you got to do in this section."
Even
So,
better. I've seen a few of those. I watched a few of them myself. Yes, yes, and they're good. They're clear, right to the point, and so that's always
there's
helpful
only a couple
because
of
a lot of
minutes, but
people
it's
get
just
kind of lost when just reading things. So
when you look at a section of the business plan, it's like, what
yeah,
do I
yeah,
need
no, they're
to
good. They're good,
what
and
do
the
I need to
quicker they are,
say
the
here?
more engaging.
What's an investor or a lender or somebody looking for in this section? Like, I don't even know why I'm writing this. Yeah,
Yeah,
you do. Now you do. Well, I appreciate you having me
yeah.
on
I
your
think
show,
you're going out
Jamila.
a little
Is
bit.
it?
Could you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Thank you so much. And I do have one more question before I let you go. Um, when it's all said and done, what do you want your company to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for how we help millions of businesses. I don't know that we're going to be remembered, quite that much because we're kind of do handle a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. It's not the upfront, flashy, glamorous stuff. But I
Right,
think
right.
somewhere in people's minds, they think, I couldn't have built this business without it. And so, I mean, you could, but I mean,
Right.
you're going to work a lot harder, unfortunately. But yeah.
Oh,
And ultimately,
some of
I'd
us
like to
can't.
be,
Look, it's a lot of work.
what's that? Yeah. It
It's
takes
a
a
lot
lot
of
of, a
work.
lot
So
of,
some people can't do it without it.
yeah,
Yeah,
you really, yeah. I mean, why would you try? I
absolutely,
mean, it's
absolutely.
just,
Oh, thank you, Burke, for
it's,
joining us today.
thank
Uh,
you.
there we are. Thanks so much. And I will be emailing you behind the scenes. Thank you again. Could you just, do you have any social media, anything you want to drop? Let everybody know how to find you. I've been running
Yep.
businesspowertools.com below the screen here the entire time. So if anybody
I
want to find
appreciate
you,
that. Yeah.
they will be able to find you right there. And we're going to share this video out and share the audio out as well. So again, if there's anything I can do for you on my end, feel free to yell. And hopefully we'll be in touch soon and we'll talk some more and I'll get some
Yeah.
people over to you as well. All
Love it.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks again. You have a great
And
rest of your
if you
day.
want some consulting work and working with people, you be that person helping them through some of the stuff, if that's what you want to do. That's the other thing for a lot of consultants or even people who want a good side hustle. The consultants can bolt on a whole toolbox of what they can offer clients. Because every
Absolutely.
consultant I've talked to, I asked them, how important is it a client has a business plan? And every single one of them, they got to have a plan. But if they don't, the
I have a
consultant really
plan.
can't write it like you're saying in the very beginning. But they could work with the client, say, okay, work on this section, call me on Tuesday, we'll go over it. And it's a really good piece of
That's it.
business for consultants to use. It's a tool. And the consultant can use the dashboard itself, put their logo on it, put your logo on it, show the client and go, here's what
Yes.
I can do for you. Look at this. Anyway, and then the client can put their logo on it and everybody's privatized it. So there you
Absolutely.
go.
Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much. It's been
Thanks.
a pleasure, Burke, and I will talk to you soon.
Longest 10 minutes ever, huh? Yeah, thanks.
Always. It's okay. Have a good one. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey guys, that was Burke. That was Burke Franklin, CEO of businesspowertools.com. This is another episode of 10 Minutes to Talk. I'm Jamilah Lawry, CEO of My Biz Consulting, and this is a great show. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and if you're interested in being on the show, make sure you visit us at mybizconsulting.net, which is right below my name, my face here, and sign up. Just click on podcast, sign up. If you're a CEO, you're an executive leader, or an entrepreneur looking to get your business out there, we're here to support you.